A man found dead in a hotel wasn't in any database. His fingerprints didn't match, and security footage showed he entered the room, twice. I just wanted to understand who he was. But the question became, who am I? My name is Eric Holden, independent detective specializing in private inquiries, mostly corporate, occasionally personal. This case arrived unexpectedly on a rain-soaked Tuesday night that had already stretched too long. The hotel manager from downtown Minneapolis called, his voice barely above a whisper, "We need someone who isn't the police. We need you to see this first." His voice trembled like autumn leaves in a storm. Something in that tremor made me agree immediately. The Marquis Hotel stood like a gleaming sentinel against the Minneapolis skyline, its Art Deco facade illuminated despite the late hour. The manager, Alan Prescott, met me at a side entrance, his collar damp with nervous sweat despite the November chill. "Housekeeping found him an hour ago," Prescott explained, leading me through service corridors to avoid the main lobby. "He was supposed to check out tomorrow. When he didn't respond to calls, we..." His voice trailed off as we approached room 409. The door opened to reveal a standard luxury suite, illuminated by the soft glow of bedside lamps. Nothing seemed disturbed, no signs of struggle, no overturned furniture. Just a man, lying peacefully on the bed, eyes closed as if in deep sleep. But the unnatural stillness told a different story. He appeared to be in his early 40s, with salt and pepper hair cropped short, dressed in an expensive charcoal suit that looked freshly pressed. A platinum watch gleamed on his left wrist. On the bedside table lay a passport and two phones, one sleek and modern, the other a relic from the early 2000s with physical buttons and a small screen. "Has anything been touched?" I asked, pulling on latex gloves. "No, sir. I made sure of it. That's why we called you instead of dealing with police questions about your wealthy clientele," I finished for him. "Hotels like the Marquis cater to people who value discretion above all else. I'll need to examine everything. And I'll need the security footage." The modern phone was locked, its biometric security undisturbed by death. The older phone, surprisingly, was powered on. A single text message glowed on its screen, "You'll see everything yourself. Just don't forget that you've been here before." No sender information, no timestamp. Just those unsettling words. The man's passport identified him as Richard Thorne, American citizen, born in Seattle. Something about the photo seemed off. The man in the image smiled slightly, a confident expression that contrasted sharply with the empty, expressionless face on the bed. I photographed everything meticulously before lifting his hand to take fingerprints. "Mr. Prescott, I need access to your security system," I said, carefully returning the man's hand to its original position. The hotel's security office was a cramped room filled with monitors and the lingering smell of stale coffee. The night security officer, a former cop named Daniels, pulled up the footage without questions. Prescott must have briefed him. At 9:04 p.m., Richard Thorne entered the hotel lobby through the main entrance. He walked with purpose, checking his watch once before approaching the front desk. The timestamp showed him taking the elevator to the 4th floor at 9:15 p.m. "Can you check the other entrances around this time?" I asked, a prickling sensation crawling up my spine. Daniels switched to a different camera feed. At 9:06 p.m., from the east side entrance, Richard Thorne walked in again. Same man, same suit, same confident stride. He took the same elevator route to the 4th floor. "That's impossible," Prescott whispered, the color draining from his face. "Show me the 4th floor hallway," I demanded, leaning closer to the screen. Both instances of Thorne arrived at room 409 within minutes of each other. The electronic lock system registered two key card entries at 9:13 p.m., just 2 seconds apart. "Twin," suggested Daniels. "Or maybe a glitch in the system." I shook my head. "Check the key card logs. Were there 2 cards issued for that room?" A quick check confirmed only one key was activated for room 409, under Richard Thorne's name. Back in the room, I opened the victim's suitcase. Inside were 3 identical white shirts, 3 pairs of identical shoes, and 3 toothbrushes, all new, without tags or packaging. No toiletries, no personal items, nothing that might tell me who Richard Thorne really was. But at the bottom of the case, a single sheet of paper bore a handwritten note. The choice was made in 1999. Remember Project Bremont? I photographed the note and sent the fingerprints to a contact at a private forensics lab who owed me a favor. The preliminary results arrived before dawn, no matches in any accessible database. Not criminal, not military, not civil service. Richard Thorne didn't exist on paper. The next morning brought gray skies and the kind of bone-deep cold that seeps through walls. I sat in my apartment, surrounded by printouts and digital notes, when my phone rang. Dr. Ellis from the lab sounded confused. "Eric, we ran those prints again with expanded parameters. And nothing in the external databases, but we got a local match. Those prints are identical to the ones we have on file for you." My coffee mug slipped from my hand, shattering on the hardwood floor. "That's impossible. Run it again." We did. 3 times. 99.97% match to your prints on file. I hung up and stared at my own hands as if seeing them for the first time. My mind raced through possibilities: contamination of evidence, database error, a practical joke gone wrong. None made sense. I called the lab back. A receptionist answered. "Dr. Ellis, please." "Oh, Mr. Holden. Are you calling about this morning's visit?" "Dr. Ellis is at lunch now, but..." "What visit?" A pause. "You were here at 9:23 a.m. to discuss the fingerprint results. Don't you remember?" Cold sweat broke out across my forehead. At 9:23 a.m., I had been home, reviewing the case notes. Alone. "Can you check your security footage for that visit?" 20 minutes later, I was staring at unmistakable footage of myself entering the forensics lab at precisely 9:23 a.m. Same coat, same gait, same face. But it wasn't me. It couldn't be me. The word Bremont haunted me. I searched every database I had access to, called in favors from old contacts. Finally, a hit: a classified DARPA program officially terminated in 2003. The public records were sparse, mentioning only accelerated behavior recognition studies under isolated stress conditions. Everything else was redacted or entirely missing, even from archived internet pages. One name appeared in connection with the project: Dr. Roy Mason, a neurological engineer who had worked at DARPA during that period. After hours of research, I found him living in a remote part of Wisconsin. The drive took nearly 5 hours, the landscape gradually shifting from urban sprawl to rolling farmland dusted with early snow. Mason's house sat alone on the edge of a frozen lake, a modest cabin with smoke curling from its chimney. He was older than I expected, his face deeply lined, but his eyes were sharp and wary when he answered the door. They widened slightly at the sight of me. "Dr. Mason. My name is Eric Holden. I'm investigating a case that might be connected to something called Project Bremont." The change was immediate. His entire body tensed, and he glanced over my shoulder as if expecting to see someone else. "I don't talk about that anymore," he said, his voice barely audible over the wind. "You should leave. A man is dead, doctor." He left a note mentioning Bremont. Mason's hands trembled as he gripped the door frame. After a long moment, he stepped aside. 10 minutes. That's all. The interior of the cabin was Spartan, functional furniture, walls lined with books, no personal photographs. Mason led me to a small sitting area and remained standing, his eyes constantly darting to the windows. "What do you want to know?" he asked. "What was Project Bremont?" He laughed, a hollow sound devoid of humor. The official answer: a study on accelerated decision-making under stress. The real answer. We were trying to duplicate human perception, to allow a person to be in two places simultaneously while one version trained and the other lived normally. That's impossible, I said, though the security footage from the hotel flashed in my mind. That's what the ethics committee said. That's why they shut us down. Mason moved to a cabinet and retrieved a bottle of whiskey. His hands shook as he poured himself a drink. But they were wrong. We succeeded once. How? Neural mapping, quantum entanglement, things I still don't fully understand. He downed his drink in one swallow. They said they could copy a person's consciousness, all memories, all experiences, and place it in an identical body. The copy would train for specialized missions while the original lived their normal life. When training finished, the memories would merge back. That's not possible, I repeated, but with less conviction. They told us the copy would know it was a copy. That it would accept reintegration. But they didn't account for one thing. Mason finally sat down, his eyes locking with mine. The trained copy doesn't want to disappear. It knows it's stronger than the original. And it knows exactly how the original thinks. A chill ran down my spine that had nothing to do with the Wisconsin winter. Was there a successful test? 1. Mason's voice dropped to a whisper. But we never knew who came back. And who stayed. On the drive back to Minneapolis, snow began to fall, thick flakes dancing in my headlights. Mason's words echoed in my mind, competing with rationality. Doubles, copies, consciousness transfers, it was science fiction, not reality. Yet the evidence kept piling up, the man who entered the hotel twice, the fingerprint match, my apparent visit to the lab. I returned to the hotel that evening. The manager had reluctantly agreed to let me re-examine the room before the regular cleaning staff arrived in the morning. The body had been removed, but everything else remained untouched, a time capsule of the strange case. I reviewed the security footage again, frame by frame. Just before entering the room for the final time, the man who called himself Richard Thorne looked directly at the camera and smiled. In that fraction of a second, his expression transformed from that confident smile to something else, something empty and hollow. The same expression I saw in my passport photo. Back in my apartment, I couldn't sleep. I paced the floors, checking the locks repeatedly, jumping at every sound. Around 3 a.m., I reviewed my own building's security footage. At 9:23 that morning, while I had been reviewing case notes, someone had entered the building using my key fob. Someone with my face, my walk, my clothes. The next day brought a package. No return address, delivered by courier who couldn't remember who had given it to him. Inside was a dress shirt, my size, my preferred brand. And a key card for the Marquis Hotel, room 409. On the back, handwritten in what looked eerily like my own handwriting, now you remember. Just don't make the same choice. I stared at my reflection in the bathroom mirror, searching for something, anything, that might tell me if I was the original Eric Holden or some copy created in a lab. But the face staring back gave no answers. The rational part of my mind insisted there had to be a logical explanation. Identity theft, an elaborate hoax, maybe even a psychotic break triggered by stress. But deeper down, I knew. I returned to the Marquis Hotel one last time, the key card burning in my pocket. Room 409 had been cleaned, all traces of Richard Thorne, or whoever he had been, erased. I sat on the edge of the bed where a dead man had lain, trying to make sense of the impossible. My phone rang, an unknown number. Hello? Mr. Holden. My own voice answered. I was hoping we could meet. There's something you need to understand about Project Bremont. Who is this? I demanded, though I already knew. You know who this is. The question is, do you know who you are? I hung up, hands shaking uncontrollably. Outside the hotel window, the Minneapolis skyline sparkled in the twilight. Somewhere out there was someone with my face, my memories, my identity. Someone who knew more about me than I knew about myself. And I couldn't help wondering, if you aren't the only you, and someone is already stepping forward while you think you're living in the past, then who are you really? And what choice was made in 1999 that led us both here? The key card felt heavy in my hand as I considered my next move. Whatever I decided, I knew one thing with absolute certainty: this case had just begun, and the mystery wasn't Richard Thorne. It was me.